You're watching a news on Bakhtiar, and let's begin with the top headlines making news around the world. Security tightens along NATO's eastern flank after drone is shot down in Latvian airspace. Civilian casualties surge in Ukraine. July proves the deadliest month on record in over 4 years. And the United States warns Iran of new measures that have never been seen as the standoff in the Gulf continues. We begin in Northern Europe. Latvia, an EU and NATO member, briefly issued an air threat alert on Friday for parts of its eastern territory bordering Russia and Belarus. The alert was lifted less than an hour later after Allied fighter jets reportedly shot down a UAV that had entered Latvian airspace. The Latvian armed forces did not immediately disclose further information about the drone or where it originated, but the military has warned that the recurrence of similar cases remains a possibility. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, the conflict is increasingly targeting critical supply routes. Russia's defense ministry claims it struck a railway station in the port city of Izmail, alleging the site was used to transport military cargo and fuel. Moscow also says it hit vessels escorting arms shipments off the Mykolaiv coast. At the same time, cross-border strikes continue to impact Russian commercial hubs. Authorities in Russia's Tver region report that debris from an intercepted drone damaged a Wildberries logistics warehouse overnight. The United Nations says that number of civilians killed and injured in Ukraine last month was one of the highest recorded in recent years. The figure is up almost a third month on month.
The UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission today said that more civilians were killed or injured in the country in July 2026 than in any month since March 2022, marking a new high in this year's escalation of civilian harm. The UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission verified that at least 437 civilians were killed and 2,610 injured in Ukraine in July, which is a 30% increase compared with the previous month and a 70% increase compared with July 2025. The actual figure is likely higher as the monitoring mission continues to verify information.
The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog has issued a warning about the wider relevance of the UN itself. The comments from Rafael Grossi come as UN officials say the agency could run out of funding by the end of the month.
The head of the UN's nuclear watchdog has issued a stark warning about the future of the United Nations. Speaking to the Financial Times, International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi said the organization is losing its global relevance due to an inability to resolve modern armed conflicts.
I don't see the UN being in immediate danger. I rather see it as a sort of slow death. The UN is gradually losing its relevance, not making a meaningful contribution to resolving recent crises or interstate wars.
Grossi also criticized the UN's lack of progress on climate change and social programs. His remarks come as he is widely considered a leading candidate to succeed current Secretary General Antonio Guterres when his term expires. The institutional critique coincides with a looming financial emergency. UN budget officials warned the organization's funding will run out by the end of August, threatening a severe crisis in September if major contributors, including the United States and China, fail to pay their dues on time.
Meanwhile, the UK says Russian threats of retaliation will not change its decision to detain a sanctioned oil tanker. The vessel, which is described as being part of Russia's shadow fleet of tankers, was seized off the south coast of England in June. Zeynep Farizadeh reports.
The UK government is defending a seizure of a Russian-linked oil tanker after Vladimir Putin threatened retaliation over Western seizures of Russian vessels. The small-toat has been detained near Weymouth since June after Royal Marines boarded it as part of an operation targeting Russia's so-called shadow fleet. Its captain, A.J. Pant, has been charged with breaching UK sanctions over his alleged role in transporting banned Russian oil. Putin has warned Western countries against further seizures. Speaking during Russian Pacific Fleet exercises, he described plans to seize Russian commercial vessels as piracy and robbery and warned Moscow would respond in kind. He said any retaliation would not necessarily take place in the waters where Russian ships were targeted, but wherever Russia considered necessary. The UK government says the SMOTOS operation was carried out in full accordance with international law. It says Russia's shadow fleet includes more than 700 vessels carrying around 75% of the country's sanctioned oil. Britain says the trade provides a critical source of revenue for the Kremlin and helps sustain Russia's war in Ukraine. The confrontation comes as European countries step up the pressure on their shadow fleet. The EU has sanctioned more than 630 vessels, while several European countries have detained or seized tankers suspected of helping Russia evade sanctions. The SMOTOS dispute is part of a much wider confrontation over Russia's oil trade, with Western governments tightening enforcement at sea and Moscow warning that further seizures could trigger retaliation. Zaina Farzadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
After the break, the United States warns Iran of new measures that have never been seen as the standoff in the Gulf continues. Welcome back to A News. The U.S. Treasury Secretary has warned that Washington is set to apply measures that have never been seen on Iran. The comments from Scott Bessent come as Iran insists the Strait of Hormuz will stay closed until its demands are met.
The United States says it can maintain its naval blockade of Iran indefinitely while preparing a new round of economic measures against Tehran. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the U.S. Navy can sustain its presence in the region by rotating ships in and out. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said further measures would be announced next week, promising unprecedented economic pressure. Washington has reimposed the blockade after briefly lifting it for a month in June. The restrictions have cut Iran off from a major source of foreign currency and added to the impact of earlier strikes on its energy infrastructure. Tehran has responded by tightening its grip on the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian officials say the waterway will not reopen until U.S. sanctions are removed and frozen Iranian assets are released. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has also warned Washington against what he called a dangerous miscalculation over the strait. Iran's military command says commercial vessels and oil tankers cannot safely cross without permission and supervision from Iranian forces. 2 vessels operated by Abu Dhabi National Oil Company were attacked while traveling through the strait on Thursday, according to UAE state media. The UAE government blamed Iran. The disruption is adding to concerns over global energy supplies. The International Energy Agency now expects global oil supply to fall by around 4.3 million barrels a day this year, while shipping traffic through Hormuz has dropped sharply since the war began.
Tehran claims control of the waterway will remain in the hands of the country's military. It cited the U.S. naval blockade of Iran's southern ports as one of the main factors. A News correspondent Raj Shirelilo reports from Tehran.
Iran has warned that commercial and oil tankers will not be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz without the permission and supervision of its armed forces. In a statement broadcast late Thursday, Colonel Ebrahim Zulfaqari, a spokesman for Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya central headquarters, rejected U.S. claims that vessels can continue to transit the strategic waterway normally, calling those statements false. The warning comes as Iran and the United States approach the expiry of their interim peace agreement with just 3 days remaining and prospects for reviving the 60-day ceasefire deal known as the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding appearing increasingly uncertain. The agreement has already faced difficulties over conflicting interpretations of its provisions, particularly Clause 5, which addresses shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, linking the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. Meanwhile, Mohammad Mokhber, an advisor to Iran's supreme leader, warned that Tehran could shift to an offensive strategy if its conditions are not met. According to the Vana news agency, Mokhber also accused the United States of failing to protect its allies in the Persian Gulf. The statements come amid heightened tensions between Tehran and Washington, with the status of shipping through one of the world's most important energy transit routes emerging as a key point of disagreement. Turaj Shiralilu, Foreign News from Tehran.
U.S. President Donald Trump's envoy Jared Kushner could travel to Israel next week for discussions on Gaza. According to reports by the Reuters news agency, the talks are expected to focus on advancing Trump's 20-point Gaza plan, including Hamas disarmament and the gradual withdrawal of Israeli forces. Jared Kushner is also expected to meet Egyptian, Qatari and Turkish mediators in Cairo. The visit comes amid disagreements between Israel and Hamas over the proposed deal. The West Bank remains tense after days of clashes between Palestinian families and Jewish settlers. The Israeli military says it has sent more forces to the village of Gusra to maintain security, while Palestinian residents say they are under siege.
Israeli troops entered Palestinian homes in the West Bank village of Qusra on Thursday. Village officials say Jewish settlers have surrounded 3 homes for several days.
The settlers are focusing on this area too much, especially Qusra. It is surrounded by 5 settlements, and these settlers are very fierce. They besieged this house, the house of Qusay Abu Rida. A whole family lives in this house. They have been besieged for 5 days without food or drinks. Even the foreign volunteers are not allowed to bring them food and drinks.
The siege began at the weekend. Settlers blocked the road leading to the homes, set up tents in the front gardens, and prevented residents from leaving. They also cut off electricity and water supplies.
6 homes saw their residents evacuated and taken over by the army. They are protected by the military helps them, there is mutual love. We saw them praying together, barbecuing together and dancing together. They are not very interested in helping the besieged families.
The Israeli military said it had sent forces to Qusra to protect residents and maintain security. It said the families would be allowed to remain in their homes. A day earlier, soldiers tried to remove the settlers but failed. Additional troops were later deployed to the area. The families trapped inside say they have run out of food and medicine. They also say settlers have thrown stones at their homes, damaged their property and shouted abuse at them. The US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, said Israeli soldiers and police had gone to the area after a request from his office. He described the actions against the families as criminal. Palestinians accuse the Israeli military of allowing settlers to seize land with impunity. The West Bank has been under Israeli control since 1967. Around 3 million Palestinians and about 500,000 Jewish settlers live there. According to Israeli watchdog Peace Now, there are 146 official settlements and about 390 smaller outposts across the territory.
In northern Greece, wildfires have reached the resort town of Siviri, forcing hundreds to evacuate. More than 140 firefighters, 9 aircraft and 7 helicopters are battling the blaze. Anita Sharma reports.
Welcome to this day in Europe, where firefighters continue to battle major wildfires as another punishing heat wave grips the continent. In northern Greece, gale force winds are driving a wildfire through the popular Halkidiki holiday region. Flames swept into the seaside resort of Siviri, burning homes and forcing hundreds of tourists and residents to flee by land and sea. More than 140 firefighters are battling the blaze, backed by 9 aircraft and 7 helicopters. 1 firefighter was injured, while winds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour hampered efforts. The fire brigade spokesman said the top priority now is to extinguish the fire and get people to safety. In Spain, 2 major fires are burning at opposite ends of the country. In the northeast, the Peñas de Rícolos fire in the Huesca province burned around 8,000 hectares, forcing 12 communities to evacuate. It also entered the protected San Juan de la Peña area, threatening its historic monastery complex, prompting the government to evacuate as many works as possible. In the south, the Niebla fire affected more than 31,000 hectares across Huelva and Seville. Its advance has slowed, but it remains active. The mayor of Berrocal, a small village in Huelva, said they will live in a, quote, prison of ashes for a long time. France also faces extreme fire conditions as temperatures approach 40 degrees Celsius. Across the EU, nearly 555,000 hectares have burned in more than 1,600 fires so far this year. With heat, drought, and strong winds persisting, the threat is far from over. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
More than 35,000 hectares of land have been razed by a wildfire in southern Spain. There are fears the blazes near the town of Aznalcóllar could spread further. The local mayor says stronger winds are expected later, which could push the flames into other regions.
More than 30,000 or 35,000 hectares have already been burned, plus what seems to be expected throughout today because the winds are going to pick up speed. We expect to be informed this afternoon by the monitoring committee, of which I am also a member as mayor of the affected area, that the wind speeds will increase this afternoon, along with the fire's danger level, so that it continues to gather fuel towards Aznalcóllar and towards the north. There are about 700 firefighters working with the UME, Military Emergency Unit, and IMFOCA, Regional Body for Defense Against Forest Fires, plus firefighters from the Seville and Huelva provincial consortiums. Civil Protection and the Civil Guard from all over are also working on the fire, and all the regional police forces and of course the environmental agents and others, and we're all here trying to see if the weather cooperates, if the wind lets up, and if this will ease up.
Meanwhile, Hungary has warned that the extreme heat conditions across Central Europe are putting the country's power system under growing strain. Romania has also been forced to cut output at its last nuclear reactor due to falling water supplies from the Danube River. Here is more.
Hungary and Romania are facing disruption to nuclear power generation as record-low river levels leave reactors struggling to access enough cooling water amid an intense heatwave and drought across Europe. Hungary's Pax nuclear plant is currently operating at around a quarter of its capacity after output was cut to just over 10% earlier this month. The 2-gigawatt facility came close to a full shutdown for the first time in 44 years. On Thursday, Hungary began engineering work on the Danube to raise water levels around the plant. The plans include building a submerged barrier on the riverbed to control the flow of water. Officials are also preparing to sink 2 80-meter barges if levels fall further in the coming days. Prime Minister Peter Magyar said the situation remained difficult, with water levels expected to fall further.
The situation is still not simple. In fact, I could say that it is difficult, and a country has learned that at the Pax nuclear power plant, a few centimeters or even millimeters can be of enormous importance and can directly affect production. Water experts say that Pax will have minus 121 centimeters by tomorrow morning. The Danube has started to recede again.
Meanwhile, Romania shut down its last operating nuclear reactor on Thursday after attempts to redirect cooling water failed to provide enough. The developments highlight a growing challenge for nuclear power in a warming climate. Europe has warmed faster than any other continent, and this year's extreme heat and drought have added urgency to the debate over how nuclear plants can adapt. Many reactors rely on rivers for cooling, leaving them vulnerable to drought and extreme heat. Both Hungary and Romania plan to expand nuclear generation, but are now looking at alternatives that are less dependent on river levels. Options include cooling towers and engineering projects designed to increase river flow. Nuclear power provides a steady supply of electricity without direct carbon emissions. But the latest disruptions show how climate change is creating new challenges for the industry.
To discuss the impact on nuclear power, energy security and climate adaptation, we are joined by Gustavo de Aristegui, former Spanish diplomat and ambassador speaking to us from Rabat, Morocco. Ambassador de Aristegui, welcome to A News. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador de Aristegui, let's begin with the immediate situation. How serious is the current Danube water crisis for Hungary's PAX and Romania's Cernavodă nuclear plants?
Well, the Danube water crisis and all the waterways of Central Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, that are crucial not only for your energy, but also for transportation. And let us not forget that in a moment where gasoline and diesel prices are reaching their peaks in many, many months, the alternative of road transportation and railroad transportation is normally the barges on the rivers and the canals. When the rivers and the canals have no water, the river barges cannot be transported and they have to resort to the trucks. When they resort to the trucks, that immediately impacts inflation. So right now we have a very, very nasty domino effect that is affecting 3, 4, 5 different aspects of the European economy and well-being. Of course, first and foremost is the security of nuclear power plants. And definitely, it's like a terrible paradox. If you put them next to the sea, those countries that actually have coastlines, everybody comes to mind or brings to mind or to attention the tragedy of Fukushima. If you put them next to a river, if the river levels fall below a certain level, then the danger of overheating the nuclear plant becomes very apparent. So it is a very complicated situation. As you said in the introductory video, the climate emergency in Europe is reaching very critical levels. And many countries have never experienced this level of heat. And when one travels in the north of Europe that is very ill prepared for this kind of weather, you see that people are suffering. Businesses are suffering, tourism is suffering, and a lot of the tourists that were going to the north of Europe, we could call weather tourists. There's going to be a phenomena that you are going to be witnessing more and more throughout the years, and you will call them weather nomads, people that are going to be fleeing the heat or climate change, going to more benign climate perspectives.
Ambassador de Aristegui, in your view, could Russia exploit nuclear-related energy shortages to increase pressure on Europe?
Of course. Let us not forget that one of the alternatives of gas-powered power plants, combined cycle power plants that use either gas or fuel, is always hydroelectric power plants. Of course, the less the rivers have water, the less power a hydro power plant can generate electricity, or nuclear facilities. So the more or the deeper, the more serious the shortage of energy in Europe is going to be, the stronger the capacity to put pressure on Europe that the Russians are going to have. It is really a dramatic situation for the continent.
So Hungary is considering a submerged riverbed seal and other emergency measures to raise water levels near PAX plant. Are such engineering solutions sustainable long-term, or are they mainly emergency fixes?
I'm not an engineer, but common sense dictates that this is only a very short-term solution. And how are you going to be able to rocks and other kinds of material that you drop into rivers can be removed later on by mechanical means. But if you sink barges, that is a different ball game. I mean, are you going to be able to resurface that barge? And if not, you are damaging the currents of the river. You're probably damaging the wildlife. You're probably generating a new problem there. So it is only a very short-term solution. But of course, it is a dramatic situation, and drastic measures need to be taken.
So could competition for scarce water create tensions between energy production, agriculture, and communities?
Well, let us see what has happened in other parts of the world. A lot of people were saying that the clashes between Muslim herdsmen and Christian farmers in Nigeria were due to religious aspects. Not at all. They were due to climate change. They were due to the lack of grazing grounds and the lack of water that pushed the grazers and the herdsmen into the farms of the agricultural lands, and that created an immediate clash. I am absolutely certain, and I've written this in my book that is coming out next year, that one of the clashes that we can be sure that is never going to end, in spite of artificial intelligence, in spite of the energy crisis or whatever, is water. Water is one of the most crucial elements, and the scarcity of water is going to be one of the main issues and one of the main problems of humanity in the next decade or two.
So nuclear energy is often presented as a solution to climate change because it produces large amounts of electricity without direct carbon emissions. Could increasingly severe heat waves and droughts undermine that argument?
I don't think so. Again, there are a lot of countries that have nuclear plants that are in the vicinity of the sea, for example, and even those that are not in the vicinity of the sea, the very few nuclear facilities that Spain has are not next to the sea. But desalinization is an option for countries that have large coastlines, as is the case of Spain or France, Italy, or Greece. We desalinize water, and we can use it for agriculture. We can use it for human consumption. We could use it for cooling power plants. And this is going to be something that is absolutely necessary. What we cannot accept by any way are the climate fanatics. People like the Vice President of the European Commission, Mrs. Rivera, that was fanatically against nuclear energy, and that now has had to change her position under the pressure of the governments of France, Germany, Italy, and others, because it is very obvious that there is very, very little options to curb two very serious problems in the near future. One, of course, is energy, and the other is the use of water for more important things than just cooling things.
Ambassador Darius Tegin, finally looking ahead 10 to 20 years, what needs to change in Europe's nuclear strategy to ensure that reactors remain reliable as droughts, heat waves and water shortages become more frequent?
Let us be very, very clear. There's only been one major serious incident, and it was Chernobyl, and it was a very deficient Russian technology. Western technology has not had any serious incident in 50 years. Number one. Number two, nuclear technology has greatly improved in the last decades. And number three, there is the new tendency of the mini nuclear capacity. These mini nuclear power stations that are being used and have been invented in France and are actually a very good solution. They are less contaminating, and they are very easy to design and to construct, and it's very, very fast. And this is really a very good alternative.
Ambassador Gustavo Darius Tegin, thank you very much for your insights and for joining us on A News. We greatly appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Meanwhile, record rainfall has triggered severe flooding in eastern Japan, claiming at least 6 lives and leaving nearly 25,000 households without power. Authorities in the Chiba prefecture have deployed soldiers to assist with relief efforts after more than 360 millimeters of rain fell in a single day. The extreme weather inundated roads and railways during one of the country's busiest holiday weeks. The disruption also stranded around 7,000 travelers at Tokyo's Narita airport, though officials say flight operations have now returned to normal. Italy's Mount Etna has been spewing ash and volcanic material, with drone footage showing fresh activity on Thursday evening. The eruption has disrupted flights at Catania airport in Sicily. Arrivals were suspended until 8 o'clock Friday morning. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled or rerouted over the past week because of the volcanic ash. Mount Etna is Europe's highest and most active volcano. After the break, we'll look at more stories shaping the region. Welcome back to A News. After decades of conflict, Azerbaijan is shifting its focus from securing its borders to expanding its economy. Baku aims to position itself as a central transit hub between Europe and Asia. And to unlock those lucrative global trade routes, it needs something it hasn't had in 30 years, a lasting peace agreement with neighboring Armenia.
For more than 30 years, Azerbaijan's regional strategy was defined by a fight for its internationally recognized territory. Having achieved that goal following its 2023 military offensive, the government in Baku is pivoting to global logistics. The objective is to turn military victory into long-term geopolitical influence. The primary focus is the Middle Corridor, a massive trade route bypassing Russia to link Europe directly with Asian markets. The US and the European Union are heavily backing the project to diversify their supply chains, but securing multi-billion-dollar infrastructure investments requires predictable regional stability. According to an analysis by European Security and Defense, that makes a final peace treaty with Armenia an economic necessity. The June re-election of Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan provides Baku with a viable negotiating partner. While not viewed as a political ally, Azerbaijani officials see Pashinyan as a leader capable of making the compromises needed to open long-closed borders, including vital land routes to Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan exclave. But establishing this cross-border network faces regional hurdles. Neighboring Iran is highly sensitive to new transport agreements, fearing they could reduce Tehran's own role as a major transit state. At the same time, Baku must carefully manage its relationship with Moscow, aiming to protect its independence without sparking direct confrontation. Talks over a comprehensive peace agreement are continuing. While the military phase of the conflict has ended, the borders between the two countries remain closed. Unlocking the region's transport network now depends entirely on whether Baku and Yerevan can finalize a formal deal.
Georgia, Azerbaijan, Turkey and Bulgaria are negotiating a new overland electricity corridor to establish Tbilisi's first direct energy link to Europe. Officials say the transit route will transform Georgia into a regional hub, allowing power from the South Caucasus to reach European markets. The overland network is part of a broader green energy initiative, which also includes a planned high-capacity submarine cable across the Black Sea. The participating nations are now forming a joint company to finance and construct the infrastructure. To discuss the plans, their economic potential and what they could mean for regional and European energy security, we're joined by Dr. Vakhtang Maysaya, political analyst speaking to us from Tbilisi, Georgia. Dr. Maysaya, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Dr. Maysaya, how significant is this proposed electricity corridor for Georgia, Azerbaijan, Turkey and Bulgaria? And why has the project gained momentum right now?
It's very drastically important. It's more vital important, I would say, because it's just implicated to launching new regional integration, new just about regional economic integration. I would like to underpin this score. And of course, it's also just increased possibilities of Azerbaijan to completely transformed and completely formed as like an international energy hub. I mean not regional, but international energy hub. Just providing not only just about fossil, just about fuels, but also just provided just about so-called green, just about so-called green, just energy resources like just electricity. And I guess this just contract, it also stipulated to also increase South Caucasus importance as like a key transit gateway connecting just about east to west. And I would like to mention that Georgia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and also just European countries, European Union member countries like Romania and Hungary also participating in providing another just about so-called electricity grid transit just projects. It means about undersea project under the edges of the Black Sea basin, which also costs about $3 billion. And I guess this land land just about transit routes will also just increase the capability of European Union to also increase its energy security, also just avoid and get rid of the dependency of the Russian just about energy, transit capabilities, and deliveries also, not deliveries, and of course it also just increase also geopolitical partnership links of South Caucasus actors with European Union and its member countries. So it's, I guess, I just indicate about more than about three main indicators here. Just about two are linked with about energy security, and third one links with geopolitics, just about security provisions.
Dr. Maisaya, Georgia says it could export its own electricity through the corridor. How much additional generation capacity would Georgia need to make this commercially significant?
Well, Georgia also just produced some electricity, but also our production is quite not just about exceeds quite about large capacities amounts. Why? Because Georgia also faced some three blackouts. Also, the blackouts indicated that Georgians are facing some problems with generating about electricity inside of the country. So I guess this project also make possible just to also increase patience and consumption of electricity inside of the Georgia. And I guess this Azerbaijani generated electricity will also provide some good fora to avoid such maybe just blackout accidents which we faced about last month. And of course, it will be like a good offset for compensating such kind of the losses. I don't know what concrete data you mentioned about when Georgia want to also transit its own generating about electricity.
Yes.
Because mainly in summer we also just could anyway just about provide some electricity, just production, but not so much in order just to almost get delivered to the via transit links and supplied with Turkey and European Union just about member countries, which this project also just envisaged. And I'll mention that is led by very best and good incentive of Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev, who also just very well just about understand the importance of the green energy and green electricity. And of course, I would like to mention that namely President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, was like just about pioneer and author of the providing green electricity in edges of our region. So this also just implicated that Azerbaijan could also convert in its conceptual and theoretical incentive into the practical, just about one practical project cases, and of course to become as like a very possible just about leader, not only geopolitical but even geoeconomic development just about scenarios in ages of the region, of course, regional frame.
Dr. Maisaya, Turkey is increasingly being described as the bridge between Caspian energy resources and European markets. How strategically important would this electricity corridor be for Ankara?
It will just additional surplus to those one which Turkey also provided as like a transit grid, transit gateway, energy gateway, providing just about energy deliveries from east to west and connecting with about European market, just about Caspian Basin energy, just about powers, which we could consider about just about Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, partially Turkmenistan, and of course in this case, of course, Turkey will also just increase its potency, also to be provided like a green just about energy project provider, which is very important from European Union just energy security perspective. And of course, it will be just also Turkey will be a contributor in promotion of the European Union energy corridor strategy, and will be just about good strategic partner from geo-economic perspective way for European Union. So and it could also just facilitate about to renew just about talks on possible Turkey membership to the European Union.
So could this project complement rather than compete with the Black Sea submarine electricity cable linking the South Caucasus with Romania and Europe?
So it's a no doubt that it will be just complementary, not just about competitive, but complementary one. Because why? Because both just about projects' main aim are to get connected Caspian Basin, just about energy resources, including about just about green, just about energy resources, which electricity we can do just deem in that case to the European markets. So it doesn't matter how it should be just about done. We are maritime or we are the land way, but both are just linked into one, which we call European Union market. So I guess both will be and are to be considered like a complementary one, and will be just about good fortune to make an energy diversification of delivery electricity to the European Union countries.
Dr. Maisaya, just brief, looking 5 to 10 years ahead, could this corridor become part of a much larger Caspian to Europe green energy network, potentially carrying electricity from Central Asia as well?
Well, it depends, because it depends how European Union could consume these green such as energy resources. Of course, if European Union just will just have just about enough to get reserves, that's enough resources to be also being delivered to the Central Asia directions. Because why? Because involvement of Azerbaijan into the even Central Asia affairs and in form of the 5+1 or 6 just about format international case also should be considered that, by the way, Turkey and Georgia should be also been get included to realize geo-economic new perspective project in providing about green electricity and green energy resources for Central Asia actors and Central Asia states. Because for the Central Asia states also just about energy security also becomes like a vital important just about the issues together with about water security just about issues. And I guess that it will be a good idea that Georgia and Turkey, with involvement with Azerbaijan, could also they could become as like a biggest just about promotion of the green energy just about projects realization to the Central Asia area and Central Asia regional actors and countries, which also just and also just far to the China's directions. Why not? China also could be just getting involved in realization of this project too.
Dr. Vakhtang Maisaya, thank you very much for joining us on A News and for sharing your insights on this important regional energy project. We greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Turkey has revealed new details of its defense pact with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, outlining plans for joint military drills, political coordination and deeper defense industry cooperation. The agreement signed in Mecca last week also includes a collective defense clause under which an attack on one member would be treated as an attack on all three. Adam Morrow reports from Istanbul.
Turkey has provided new details on how its newly signed defense pact with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan is expected to work, outlining plans for high-level political coordination, joint military exercises, and deeper defense industry cooperation. At a briefing in Ankara, the Defense Ministry said the Mecca Joint Defense Agreement would establish what it described as strategic political and military mechanisms bringing together the three countries' defense and foreign ministers, as well as their chiefs of general staff and armed forces commanders. The ministry said that cooperation will be expanded gradually, beginning with command post and field exercises before moving on to joint military drills involving land, naval, and air forces, along with air defense units and unmanned systems. Officials say the planned exercises are meant to identify operational gaps before any potential crisis, providing lessons that can then be applied to joint military doctrines, training, and planning. The landmark defense pact goes beyond conventional military coordination. According to Ankara, the three countries will pursue joint production of defense systems, technology cooperation, and logistics support, with unmanned systems, electronic warfare, and artificial intelligence among the priority areas. Signed in Mecca last week, the agreement contains a collective defense clause under which an armed attack on one member would be regarded as an attack on all three. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has compared the principle to NATO's Article 5, while stressing that the agreement is not directed against Iran or any other country. The Defense Ministry has also stated that the new mechanism isn't intended to rival or replace the Western NATO alliance. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Regional security was at the center of talks between Turkey and Egypt in Ankara, with the two sides also discussing defense ties, the Strait of Hormuz, and the latest developments in Gaza. Here is more.
We are engaged in the Quartet framework, defense pact between Turkey, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, and Egypt has a very unique relationship on the bilateral level with all the sides of the Quartet, whether the brotherly kingdom of Saudi Arabia or the state of Pakistan, or with the Republic of Turkey, unique relationships which are not limited to political fields only, but extend to different fields. Naturally, Egypt is keen on pushing bilateral relationships with the three countries.
In fact, without explicitly naming it, we started regional ownership and regional cooperation with a new spirit and a new vision a long time ago. Of course, this needed to be structured, a foundation needed to be laid. The foundation laid in Mecca by the three countries was truly a historic initiative put forth by our leaders. On this point, of course, we have been discussing this issue with our Egyptian brothers from the very beginning. We are consulting very closely. Egypt is one of the brotherly countries we consult with first on all the issues we address in the region, whether it be security, political or economic. This issue is important to us. Of course, they themselves have stated this. They are currently evaluating it with certain details, but Egypt is our natural partner. God willing, it will soon become our official partner as well.
5 years after the Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan, experts warn that restrictions on women and girls have deteriorated sharply, alongside a worsening humanitarian crisis. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis reports from Kabul.
5 years on, the consequences of Taliban rule are being felt across almost every part of Afghan society. A group of independent human rights experts appointed by the United Nations paints a grim picture. The ban on girls' education beyond grade 6 has now lasted 5 years, and it's leaving an entire generation without secondary schooling. Women also remain barred from universities and many jobs, with restrictions on movement, healthcare, and public life. The experts also describe the Taliban's restrictions as gender persecution and gender apartheid. They are urging support for accountability efforts, including International Criminal Court arrest warrants for the Taliban's supreme leader and chief justice. But the repression extends beyond women. Religious minorities, journalists, human rights defenders, and former officials are among groups reported to face serious risks. Public corporal punishment has also increased. The Taliban's Supreme Court said at least 1,100 people were flogged in 2025. Meanwhile, Afghanistan's humanitarian crisis remains severe, with more than 17 million people facing acute food insecurity. Nearly 4 million children are acutely malnourished. Drought, funding cuts, and the return of millions of Afghans have added to the pressure. The experts are urging governments to restore aid, halt forced returns of Afghan refugees, and ensure that women have a meaningful role in decisions about Afghanistan's future. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
This concludes our news update for the hour. Thank you for your time and stay tuned to A News for more updates.